G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to War Thunder with Mags. Today we're dropping down to rank 2, battle rating 3.7 for a round in the F6F3 Hellcat. This aircraft is quite the favourite amongst War Thunder players. 6 12.7mm M2 Browning machine guns with 6,400 rounds of ammunition, 610 km an hour at 23,000 feet, although it will do a respectable 550 in level flight at sea level. Max altitude 36,000 feet with a 21.8 second turning time. Rate of climb is 2,672 feet per minute, and it does carry a respectable bomb load, although we won't be using it in this fight. Now, our map today is of course Sicily. This seems to be one of the most common maps to pop at the moment. It's actually something that I've noticed since the latest patch dropped. All the current map pops seem to be either Sicily, as we see here, Rua, or Operation Hokkaido, which it's kind of sad. I know there is a large number of maps available. I'm a little curious why we don't get to actually see more of them. Anyways, this is a battle rating 4 match, so we're not quite top tib, we're not bottom either, we're sitting quite nicely in the middle. And as I said, we're up against the Germans, so we climb out to 16,000 feet and begin moving in on our targets. Now, I started my climb this match up the south wall. I was the only aircraft that went in that direction. Took myself all the way to 17,000 feet to begin with, and then turned down and dove down 500 to 1,000 feet as I was heading towards the combat zone. Now, this left me as the highest altitude allied aircraft on the team, although it wasn't that the team wasn't climbing. Most players were above 13,000 feet at the initial beginning of the match, with Germany slightly higher, but with only 2 German aircraft, as you can see in front at the moment, that were actually higher than I was. And this also left me at a very good speed at over 400 kilometers an hour, leaving me in a really good position to begin my engagement. So, first target is up, well, 2 technically, a 109 G2 and a Focke-Wulf 190A. Now, the 109 G2 is probably the more dangerous aircraft of the 2. So my first shots are lined up to go for him, and he is also the second aircraft in the line, so he is the better target. However, he's cutting across fast, he's got the speed on, fire a quick burst, no way known it was going to hit. There's no way known I can reverse the turn enough to be able to follow him either, so change over and start engaging the 190 that is now on a teammate's tail. One burst through, that lets him know I'm here and taps him up a little bit, and at this point the engagement begins. Now, we are diving towards the ground at the moment. Airspeed is accelerating rapidly between both aircraft. We get another good hit there, smoke the engine, which is always a good sign. If we can damage that Focke-Wulf's engine, it'll slow him up and make it easier for us to catch him. As in a straight up dive, there is no way known in the Hellcat that I'm going to be able to keep with the Focke-Wulf 190 in an extended period if he decides to stop turning. However, because we're accelerating, it is a little difficult. The elevation control isn't particularly great on the Hellcat. I wasn't able to get the lead in the turns. At this point, he tries to extend by straightening up. Gives me the opportunity to put 50 cals in, set him on fire, and execute the aircraft. So kill one down, immediately pull for altitude. And as always, after taking a kill, immediately check my 6, and it's a good thing I did. The second Focke-Wulf 190 is now engaging, and immediately go into evasive rolls and loops. Now this is an area where the Hellcat actually has the advantage. A lot of people underrate the Focke-Wulf 190A4's capability in a maneuvering fight. It's actually not as bad as people think. It's not fantastic at the roll, you wouldn't want to engage a Spitfire doing it, but it's not something to be sneezed at. That said, the Hellcat is better, and I'm able to outmaneuver the Focke-Wulf 190A4. It realises it's in trouble and it's burnt a lot of energy, and it is now starting to dive away. But I'm not about to let that happen. Now, that Focke-Wulf 190 only took a shallow dive, so it didn't accelerate as rapidly as it could have, and he was manoeuvring slightly as he was diving away, looking to try and engage the P-51 on my team just ahead of us. This has cost him a little bit of speed. Under normal circumstances, the Focke-Wulf 190A4 would be able to easily outpace the Hellcat in this situation. However, he slowed himself up just enough that I'm able to slowly reel him in. However, we have an ME-410 coming in. I'm not going head on with one of those, so quickly break around and continue my pursuit. This did cost me a little bit of speed myself, but it wasn't enough to make the difference. I can come back to the 410 later on. Now, we do also have a duck to the left as well. Now, the duck is easily able to swing the nose around fast enough to cross the T. However, at the speed I'm moving at, providing I do not slow down, by the time he settles in on the 6, he's just not close enough to get an accurate shot on me, and this allows me to just continue heading towards my target. This Focke-Wulf 190 is one of the last main fighters on the enemy team, so it needs to be dealt with now. Once it's dealt with, I can come back and mop up the remaining ground attackers. Now, at this point, the Focke-Wulf 190 is starting to realise that I am getting incredibly close. I'm still holding fire at this point as he is outside of my gun convergence, and I want to make sure I'm down to 800 to 700 meters before I start firing my first shots. Now, he can run, and eventually I'm not going to be able to maintain the speed, so I need him to start maneuvering again. At the moment he's not. So, take one lead, get a hit, and immediately he starts dipping and rising. Now, I call this the noob wobble. And it has two problems as an evasive maneuver. Firstly, it's very predictable, so it's very easy to work out where the target is going to go to and fire a shot and still manage to hit him despite the maneuver. The second thing is it kills your airspeed, making it even easier for me to close the distance on him and force him into a situation where he is now going to have to turn and attempt to try and engage me in a low altitude turn fight in a Hellcat, which is not an ideal situation for a Focke-Wulf at all. In the end, it was that little noob wobble that he was doing there at the end that actually allowed this situation here to occur. If he'd flown straight and true, his airspeed would have outmatched mine eventually, and he would have started opening the distance, and at that point I would have been forced to disengage. Now, in the straight up spiral turning battle that is happening now, the Hellcat has all the advantages. Even without the combat flaps, I can match the Focke-Wulf with combat flaps. Turning combat flaps on allows me to easily pull the guns ahead, smoke his engine, continue the turn through. Do come very close to the ground there. I was within probably 30 centimeters of the ground or less. Take the lead again, and that is the Focke-Wulf 190 eliminated. So, with the last fighter removed, now we've got to find some new targets. And initially I thought maybe the team had actually mocked everything up. There doesn't appear to be anything left. So, start taking altitude. I've got no risks at this point in time. Plane is undamaged. I'm still good on ammunition. Let's get some altitude. Of course, it didn't take too long for the missing ME410 from earlier on in the match to show itself once again. So while we're closing the distance here, let's have a quick chat about the 50 cals. I keep getting asked in the comments section, what's my opinion of the 50 cals? Do I think they've been nerfed? How am I feeling about the 50 cals underperforming? As you can see, I don't really have a lot of a problem with them. No, they don't hit like 20mm. They shouldn't. They're not 20mm, they're 50 cals. But they have higher endurance, you carry more ammunition with them, and providing you can keep them grouped on a target and aim to hit weak and vulnerable points of an aircraft, I generally find them fairly effective. It can be problematic taking out bombers, but really that's it. So the ME410 is closing in, it's looking for a head-on, do a quick evasive roll, dips down underneath it, and then take the plane over into a loop. Bank over hard right. At this point I'm looking to let the 410 cut underneath me, chop the throttle a little so I can roll in on at 6. As it pulls into the vertical, it kills all its airspeed. I am loaded with energy at this point. Raise the flaps to reduce the drag during the vertical maneuver, so I hang for a little bit longer, tip the nose back down. Again, back on WEP, I want to get as much energy as I can so I can throw it into this bank as quickly as possible, and maintaining enough energy to easily intercept regardless of where he goes. Take the lead, and there we go. Fire the engine. Now the pilot here takes over the tail gunners and does manage to get a good slap across the front of the aircraft and damages the engine, causes me a little bit of a oil issue, but it's nothing that I'm too concerned about. The damage is only minor. It will cause me a problem within the next 2 to 3 minutes, so I am going to have to return to base at this point to fix the plane back up, but I'm not in a bad situation. I'm fairly close to the runway and I've got more than enough time to get there. Or at least that was the plan. At this point I assumed that most of the enemy aircraft that were remaining, or the one enemy aircraft that was remaining, must have returned to base, but it turns out that wasn't the case. The HS-129 is just over to my left. I did have a moment here where I sort of paused to work out whether or not I was going to go back to the runway or not, and I decided I've got about 2 to 3 minutes before this engine fails, more than enough time to deal with the duck. However, that's not to say that the duck is not a dangerous aircraft. While the Hellcat easily outperforms it in terms of speed and climb rate, the duck is incredibly maneuverable, especially in a slow speed, low altitude engagement, which is why this particular maneuver, which in the 410 would have immediately caused an overshoot, simply resulted in the duck getting right on my tail. I did have a split second of panic here, up until I saw the duck fire. Now if this had been the 30mm duck, I actually would have gotten myself into a lot of trouble. This was a big mistake on my behalf. However, the big solid tracer round lets you know that this is not a 30mm duck, this is the big cannon duck with a 75mm strapped under its belly. Now it only has 13 shots on those, and it's pretty safe to assume it's fired some off, and its secondary armament is only 7.92s. Still nothing to be sneezed at, but a hell of a lot less dangerous than the standard 20mm with the 30mm Mark 108 cannons on the first battle duck. However, a Mustang comes in to take a pass, he misses, but it does force the duck to turn around, and this has just completely opened it up, sparked the left engine on fire, put a few extra rounds in as we go, and then we just pull back for altitude. At this point, the duck cannot follow, it's burning, the duck's fucked. And with that kill, the German team is eliminated. That was the 4th and final kill, so final blow in there as well. Let's go check out the results. So the results for the match. First place for the team with 4 kills, 3,343 points for the match. We came in with Fighter Rescuer, Ground Rescuer X2, Shadow Strike Streak X2, Final Blow, Terror of the Sky and Bulletproof. 55,500 silver lines for that match, with 3,316 research points. That, as always with the US team, goes into the ether as all of my US aircraft are researched. 16 minutes was the battle time in total, which made this one of the longer matches that I've played recently. However, almost half of that battle time was tied up in the setup and getting the Hellcat into just the right position to be able to engage the enemy team without being in a position of disadvantage. Climbing that back wall, getting it up to 17,000 feet, taking the time to swing around the back of the enemy team and position myself to start the engagement from a point of advantage. So overall, the match was pretty good. I could have got myself into a potentially really bad slot should that have been the standard duck rather than the big cannon duck right there at the end, but everything else was pretty much by the numbers, which is how I flew this match. By the numbers, get myself into the right point, and then engage the enemy very carefully. This also answers, well, to those who keep asking about my opinion of the 50 cals. And yes, it doesn't matter whether we're talking about the M2s or the M3s, I have the same opinion of them across the board. They're not as powerful as 20 mils, but they shouldn't be. They make up for that by firing in volume, having a better ballistic characteristics due to being a smaller, higher velocity round, making them significantly easier to put on target, and they also make up for it in sheer ammunition volume. At over 2,000 rounds of ammunition inside of the Hellcat at the start of the match, that is enough ammunition on board to engage 5, 6, if you're really sparing on the shots, potentially 7 aircraft, and being able to afford to spray a little with those shots, not have to have 100% accuracy on them. And those kinds of numbers, a cannon-armed aircraft can never afford to miss, because every time they miss, they come closer to going to their secondary armament, which is generally rifle-calibered. I have, however, noticed that the 50 cals do set targets on fire a lot less than they used to. However, this isn't such a bad thing. The fires that I was able to set in the 50 cals in some of the past patches were ludicrous. All I had to do is look at an enemy aircraft and it exploded into a fireball. I'm still able to set fires now if I aim at the engines and aim well. So the incendiaries do still work. It doesn't seem like every round in the belt is now an incendiary, which is, well, honestly the way it should be. Anyways, ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much, as always, for watching. Please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section down below, and until next time, click like if you do, subscribe if you want to see more, fly smart, fly safe, and I'll catch you in the skies.